Time now to start handicapping the race of the week. This week we go to Baltimore for the Preakness Stakes, Grade 1, and it's the second leg of the Thoroughbred Racing Triple Crown. Just a couple of weeks back, many of these horses in this race met in the Kentucky Derby. In fact, the top three finishers from that race, American Pharoah, Dortmund, and Firing Line, are all coming back, including Mr. Z and also Danzig Moon. Let's take a look at the field and some of the important handicapping factors as you start to take a look at this race. First off, American Pharoah drew the one hole. This is interesting because the last race he came out of the 15th post position and ran a wide trip, winning late down the lane as he retook the lead from Firing Line. Dortmund was inside. This time American Pharoah draws inside of his two rivals. Dortmund in the last race had everything in his own end, was on the front end, and it's very difficult to wire the Kentucky Derby. The main point of that race when the race was won was going from the second call to the third call when they ran a sub 24-second third quarter. It was one of the fastest third quarters of all time, and that's really when Dortmund, Firing Line, and American Pharoah kind of spread themselves out from the field. Note that he did rush up in his maiden race down here, and in his second race at Churchill Downs he did come off the pace. So now the last three races he's been on the lead. Not sure if he needs the lead, and he's definitely been outclassing some of his races. The jockey Martin Garcia does his best work on the front end. I think the key to the race will be whether American Pharoah feels like he has to go to the lead early or if Dortmund can still take that lead from the two post position, and that allows Dortmund to sit in third. But at that point, Firing Line may come in and try to box him in. Mr. Z was a late entrant to this race, a recent sale to Calumet Farm. He's off form currently. His last three races cannot endorse him. He was ninth by 20 lengths in the Louisiana Derby, was clearly defeated by American Pharoah in the Arkansas Derby, and he actually lugged in, interfered with some horses in the Kentucky Derby, and lost by 15 lengths. Used to be a good horse. He's lost 12 straight races and definitely a 30-1 shot. Danzig Moon could be in play. His pedigree, if you look, his sire is Malibu Moon. That's the father of the horse. He's got a little bit of mud breeding. A couple of years ago, Orb won the Kentucky Derby in the slop. And several other Malibu Moon horses have done well in the slop. He's also got some slop breeding on the mare side with Danzig, who has produced a lot of good runners in off tracks and on sloppy race conditions. Danzig Moon was fifth in the Kentucky Derby, losing to American Pharoah, Firing Line, and Dortmund. He has some class. He's moved up. His only bad race was really at Tampa Bay, and he may have had a little bit of a cold or some physical issues in that race because he bounced back with a couple of good efforts. Could improve still a little bit, but he does have 6 lifetime races and 4 of them this year. So I guess I'm not buying the fact that he's rounding into a new form cycle here. Taking a look at Verb, he picked up a win in his most recent race, winning by 2 lengths in a maiden special weight race. He loomed 5 wide in that race. And if you look later on, earlier he'd kind of hinted at some potential. He was bet down a few races and ended up winning his most recent race by 2 lengths, his last race in the mud. Now, Bada Vista, this horse, if you take a look at him, he's definitely going up in class. He did run in the Remsen Grade 2 as a juvenile, but some listed stakes, 4 straight listed stakes. He danced all the dances at Laurel this spring and Pimlico in his most recent win. You know, he's shown speed and a presser type, and in this race, that's just not going to get it done. He's facing Dortmund, American Pharoah, and Firing Line. They're faster, they're classier, and Bada Vista is just asking too much in this race. Purely feeler material. Divining Rod, he comes off a win in the Lexington Stakes. That was a Grade 3. Note in that race, Donworth and Fame and Power, second and third. They were just coming off maiden victories. They're running in the Sir Barton Stakes on the undercard. They would be clearly outclassed in a race like the Preakness. Divining Rod, I think, is going to get a little bit of play just because of the connections and the breeding, but speed figure wise, he's 4 to 5 lengths inferior to these horses, and he's another 5 lifetime races. I'm not sure he's getting better, and he's got all 5 of his races in his current form cycle. His first race was in November, then he raced in December, January, March, and April. So he's on a long string of races, not really getting a break. Firing Line, the runner-up in the Kentucky Derby, 6 lifetime races, 2 wins in 4 seconds. It should be noted his second place finishes, 2 of them to Dortmund, 1 of them to American Pharoah. He is a grade 1 quality. Definitely that big Sunland victory. He outclassed that field. Key to this race is going to be the jockey's decision. Does Firing Line try to go to the lead? Maybe change it. Last race in the Kentucky Derby, he kind of tracked American Pharoah. The whole race, he kept his eye on Dortmund on the inside. He had Pharoah on his outside, try to float Pharoah wide on the turn. Now he can try to maybe pin American Pharoah in at the rail, but does he do that with an off-the-pace move, or does he risk getting burned up 3 wide on the pace, especially if Dortmund goes to the lead? So I think Gary Stevens going to be the key to this race. Definitely some top contenders here. I'm going to line them up again just like they did in the Derby, except I'm going to change up the order. I'm going with Firing Line as my top selection. I think Dortmund is capable of improving, and American Pharoah definitely was the best horse in the Derby. Just not sure if he can complete the double here in the Preakness. Definitely capable of winning, but Firing Line, I think, has a little bit more chance of improving, but he could also regress. So Firing Line over Dortmund, American Pharoah third for me. Hopefully that helps you make some of your final choices for the 2015 Preakness Stakes